So now we'll go through some of those New Year's tasks that we like to remind people to do at the beginning of every new year. So the first thing we want you to be looking at is your budget. There's what we call the 50-30-20 rule. So what that means is 50% of your budget should be used for needs. Those needs include things like housing, food, your medical, transportation, and any debt payments that you have. Your wants are going to be 30% of your income. So that's going to cover things like your eating out, your traveling, your entertainment and clothing. And then your savings should be 20% of your budget. That's where we want to build that emergency fund. We want to be contributing to retirement accounts or IRA accounts. And then anything else too, we want to be paying down on that debt if it has a high interest rate on it. Generally speaking, if you have debt above 6%, that's what we want to try and tackle first. So if you have a high interest credit card or something like that, we want to be putting as much money as we can towards that so we can be reducing that. And then just another thing to remember is if your needs are more than 50% of your budget, we want to pull back from the wants portion, not the savings portion. So we want to make sure that we're always saving for the future. We're saving for that rainy day. We're saving for when the car breaks down, when you're on your way to get the refrigerator part from the store. So those are the things that we want to make sure that we're building into your plan so that you can make sure that you have those funds for falling back on so that we don't have to rely on credit cards. The next thing we want to have you guys review too is your beneficiaries. So we want to make sure beneficiaries are up to date because they override a will. So that's kind of a common misnomer is people think, oh, I have a will, my stuff will just go to what my will says. Well, that is true, but that means it has to go through probate first. So what we're trying to do is come up with ways that we can get your assets to go to beneficiaries without having to go through probate. The way to accomplish that is by having beneficiaries on your 401k or 403b accounts, your IRA accounts, any kind of taxable accounts, that type of thing. One thing we also want to remind people of is make sure that if you have any life changes that you update that. You know, we've had people that have gotten a divorced. They have the 401k from when they were first married. They got divorced. They forgot to change it. If anything happens to you, those funds will go to your ex-spouse, whereas we want to make sure that it's going to who you currently want them to go to. The other thing that you can do is to ensure your bank accounts have what's called a payable on death designation or a POD. What that means is if something happens to you, your heirs can walk into the bank with a death certificate. They change the account from your name to your heirs' names. It's easy peasy, and there is no taxable event at that point. There's no probate that you have to deal with. So that's a nice, easy way for you to be able to ensure that your heirs are able to access funds after your passing as quickly as possible. The other thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is a transfer on death deed for your real estate. So in Wisconsin and Minnesota for sure, you're able to put basically a beneficiary on any sort of real estate that you have. We do recommend this be done with an attorney. We don't want you to be putting your neighbor's house because you put a wrong legal description or something like that. So that's definitely something that this one we would want you to refer to an attorney for. But you're able to have any property that has basically a tax bill. You're able to put a beneficiary on that and pass that down to whoever you would care to pass that down to. And again, we want to remind everybody that anytime you have life changes, let's review these. I mean, the first of the year is always a good time, but in the middle of the year, if you have a marriage, a divorce, a job change, any new children, adopt any children, or if there's a death in the family, we want to make sure that we're making sure that the beneficiaries are up to date to what we want. The next thing that we'll look at is your emergency fund. So this is what we were talking about earlier with the having funds on hand so that if something catastrophic happens, we have a safety net. So we recommend 3 to 6 months of living expenses in liquid savings, which is like a checking or savings. That's generally if you have a dual income household. Chances are if you have a single income household, you'll probably want that to be more like a 6 to 9 months, maybe even 12 months, depending on if you have children or not that you're caring for as well. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, putting $50 a paycheck, $100 a paycheck. It doesn't have to be a lot, but we just want to start building that fund, because if we have that fund, chances are things won't happen as much as they would if we don't have any kind of a safety net. The next thing you can do is, once you have those 3 to 6 months of expenses saved into just like normal liquid account, you can invest in a second tier savings account. We call them here at Trust Point agency accounts. They can be called a non-qualified account. And basically it's a separate type of a brokerage account that we put into a more conservative investment. At this point, we're wanting to put it in a conservative investment because we may need to reach those funds in a short time period. So we want to have that account open so that we can start saving into that. And then as we get closer to retirement, it's great to have this third bucket of funding, you know, your regular cash savings, your retirement accounts, and then this is the third bucket. Because as you're looking at retirement, if you want to retire before 59 and a half, you can't access your retirement accounts without paying a 10% penalty for early withdrawal. So this is a great way to kind of bridge the gap if you want to retire before 59 and a half. If you're looking at bridging between, let's say, 60 and 65, and you have some medical concerns, you know, we can work with this third bucket to kind of work on non-taxable or minimal taxable income, as opposed to pulling everything out of your retirement accounts that is charged at regular income rates.